She's a member of the Croatian Support Group for Breastfeeding, Croatian IBCLC Advisors for Breastfeeding Group, and she is the initiator of the establishment of the branch in Osijek, which was established last year, and she is the president of the Croatian Association of Nurses since this year. So, Zorica, the floor is yours. Thank you for this detailed introduction. Yes, it is nice to hear some things and everything you've achieved, but that definitely wasn't what I was hoping to hear. Anyway, by the way, I do apologize for the date. I wrote October. No, we're not in October, we're in November right now. This is a quote of a person who was born with a disability. She said, "I wanted to have a child in order to be part of the historical flow." She even wrote a book. By the way, this is Judith Rogers. She wrote the book, The Disabled Women's Guide to Pregnancy and Birth. Unlike most of us, who generally feel the social pressure to have children, to increase the birth rate in Croatia, persons or women with disability are under another kind of pressure. So they're directly or indirectly pressured not to have children. And we've heard this several times this morning. Despite that, we are all equal and we still all have the same feelings and desires and ambitions for realization as human beings. Here we have some points that we have heard already several times today, but these definitions are a living organism, but nowadays the definitions focus on what a person can do and not on what they cannot do, in order to encourage people's involvement into everything that the society nowadays offers, so that they would feel as full human beings. A few words about pregnancy. First of all, I'll be talking about the pregnant women with disabilities. What is increasingly heard is that we have more and more women with disabilities who are pregnant. We also have a growing interest of disabled women or women with disabilities for motherhood and child rearing. We also know that some important questions are neglected, and these important issues make an important difference between whether or not pregnancy as an experience will be a positive or a negative one. You've heard that I am a nurse, and I would say that it's up to us to make that a memorable experience. Some of the statistic data say that in the US there are around 60 million people with disabilities. Around half of them are women. And according to Croatian data or Croatian statistics, there are around 330 women per year who have babies, while at the same time having some sort of a disability. At the same time, these people also need the support that anyone would need for a dignified motherhood. This, by the way, is a quotation from Roda's research, which you heard about during the morning session. What can we do to be more successful as healthcare professionals? Well, there are some social norms that are not good, but are still omnipresent. There are certain prejudices or ways of thinking that we might not be aware of, and that we might be able to change. Born with a disability or acquiring a disability during a lifetime, regardless of which of these two cases is at stake, the message that a woman with a disability gets from the healthcare system is that she's inappropriate for the social role in love, in marriage, or in motherhood. And this is again a quotation proving how women with disabilities are discriminated against. All women need the support of their environment in order to be able to carry out this social role in the way that they want to. For persons with disabilities, parenthood is seen as something inadequate, or actually they are seen as inadequate parents, as people who will not be able to care of their children adequately. You've heard about the legal framework in Croatia, and you know that we have the European Convention on Human Rights, we have the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities of the UN, and its Article 23 has been mentioned, because Article 23 prescribes that the state must ensure the conditions to prevent the suppression or discrimination of persons with disabilities. In other words, the discrimination of persons with disabilities should, at one point in time, hopefully completely be eradicated. Article 6 speaks about women with disabilities and about empowering their position. And that's in fact one of the messages from the this year's breastfeeding week. This list also contains on the very right a list of Croatian regulations. Of course, at the very top is the Constitution of the Republic of Croatia, followed by the Healthcare Act, the Health Insurance Act, the Anti-Discrimination Act, etc. Reproductive health. What does this concept stand for? Well, we are referring to preconception phase. That's the part of life, as we've heard this morning. Well, I think one of our guests said that she was warned about contraception at the age of 11, and she herself said that this was far too early, and that at the age of 24 she started doing her own research concerning contraception. Anyway, preconception is the period prior to parenthood, and that's the period of life when you start thinking about what it is that you want. I'm sure that now, today, here with us, there are some people thinking about the possibility of parenthood. Therefore, reproductive health care includes preconception, antenatal care, pregnancy, and postpartum period. Of course, it would be good if we had more proposals on how to provide access to persons, women with disability, to the healthcare system, so that they could be granted a positive pregnancy experience. The IBCLC recognized the need for additional training and education, so that in a timely manner, and of course in a personalized, individualized manner, women could be approached, and so that every individual with a disability could be given the opportunity to meet her own or his own needs. So that's the individual or the personalized approach that we all insist on. Of course, we must not forget that there is no difference in mothers who want to breastfeed. Here's a statement of a mother that had a good experience breastfeeding. She said, "This is the only thing, breastfeeding, that I can do for my child and that no one else can." Here are some of the diagnoses for disabilities, for example, PTSD or syndrome of carpal channel tendinitis. And these activities can limit your arm's strength, multiple sclerosis, cerebral paralysis, severe damage to the spinal cord, rheumatoid arthritis, SLE, achondroplasia, arthrogryposis, scoliosis, and so on. Perhaps I didn't even list them all. Some of the most common ones were there. The carpal tunnel syndrome is not something I'd like to go into detail on, but this can definitely cause problems during breastfeeding. So a woman can experience problems when holding the baby, breastfeeding the baby, or putting it up to digest. Or she can have problems getting dressed or putting her bra on. Our help comes down to the following. We will help the mother choose the best aid. It can be a firm pillow, which she can use as support during breastfeeding, or she will use a sling so that she will have the child nearby and help the child help itself. Or we will help her have maybe one breast, or maybe she will we will teach her to offer a breast each time she breastfeeds and use her breasts alternatively. But in any case, women know best what they need and what suits them best. Maybe we as professionals will recommend them to breastfeed lying down, but there will be women who are better at breastfeeding when sitting. There are certain other instruments, such as the tools that help you breastfeed, or that you can use to store your milk for later. Multiple sclerosis can also be a disturbance. Multiple sclerosis is characterized by multiple symptoms and relapses. Usually they have sight problems, and this can range up to more severe symptoms, such as problems with movements or fine movements, or difficulty speaking, and even depression. Some accompanying difficulties are common urinary infections, and we often see deterioration after birth, after giving birth. But this is especially interesting because of the weakness in the arms. What are the solutions for these MS cases? Well, pharmacotherapy and keeping their mobility in consultation with the experts, of course. Physical exercise during pregnancy and after childbirth is extremely important to keep the hands and the arms mobile and strong. If breastfeeding is successful, it's always easier to breastfeed than to use the bottle. But if the mother is tired, she can always store her breast milk for later. Cerebral paralysis. Again, this could be partial or complete. Inability to use your limbs. There are 4 types of cerebral paralysis, but usually we have weakened muscle structure, and the use of drugs for cerebral paralysis is extremely has an extremely high effect on pregnancy and on breastfeeding. There are common urological infections. They have problems lifting the child and positioning the child during breastfeeding. SCI. This can be caused by trauma or by tumor. The difficulties faced by the parent or by the pregnant woman will depend on the degree of SCI. Again, we mentioned autoimmune dysreflexia, which has been mentioned several times, and this can lead to changes on the skin, such as nausea, and we have different types of therapy. Now, we'll try to run through the following slides. Below T6, lactation is not reduced, but in women with greater injuries, they could have a problem with lactation because of the reduced sensitivity on the nipples. And that, in turn, reduces the signal to which goes to the brain to let the brain know that it should start producing milk. Systemic lupus, this has been mentioned. It usually deteriorates after childbirth. Myasthenia gravis. I will, if you wish, send you these tables later on. Like I said, I'm a nurse, and therefore this is a very specialized presentation. Here you have a description of the problem, of the condition and description, and the solution to the description. I have been warned that I have to hurry up, so I will not go into details. The constipation, pressure sores, and so on. These are some of the issues that I've mentioned in the tables. But remind the mother to use her fingertips to touch her stomach, to feel if her muscles have started contracting, so that she could feel any changes during pregnancy, and thus prevent any premature birth on time. mothers with disabilities have problems at maternity wards because they don't have any support during the hospital or during their stay in the hospital, or they do not have aid. For example, just a simple breastfeeding pillow. Some people will need one pillow, some will need three, some like a softer, some like a harder pillow. We need to show them how to use, how to position the baby during breastfeeding. And as we've heard, the sitting upright position is sometimes very useful. The so-called banana position will support both the mother and the baby. Here in this picture, you see a pregnant woman with a disability and her partner. The support of the environment is extremely important. The function or the role of the IBCLC nurses is very important for warning the women and their environment about the importance of this family support. But we also need to ask the mother what it is that they want, what it is that they need. And in fact, the majority of mothers with disabilities said that they felt as if they weren't seen, they weren't really visible, that social workers gave them some advice that they didn't really call for, but at the same time didn't hear their complaints. And of course, there are some things that don't work as well in Croatia as they do in Great Britain. We've heard from our guests from Great Britain and from Sweden how they have a very good system overall. And now I'd like to give you an example of a case study. A colleague told me how she had a mother with hemiplegia who had a stroke when she was 3 years old, and she had 2 children. She didn't breastfeed the last child because she had a split lip, and she could move, but she had limited movements and spasms in the hand. And how was she assisted? Well, during breastfeeding, when her spasms came, her hand or arm would be massaged. This was done either by community nurses or by family members. Unfortunately, she gave up on breastfeeding at an early phase because her family wanted to help her and started taking care of the child completely. And she got a very high temperature and uro infection, and thus her doctor gave her an antibiotic and told her not to breastfeed. So in the end, she stopped breastfeeding because everyone told her that it was bad for her and that it exerted a lot of pressure on her. So this was just a brief summary. The community nurse recognized the situation that the mother was in, and during her second pregnancy, she agreed with the mother that she was going to be her support or her advocate, and that she would support her in being as independent as she could about caring for her child. And the mother was quoted as saying during the first pregnancy that everyone else seemed to be able to soothe the child while she couldn't. But during the second pregnancy, with the help of the community nurse, things changed completely. So from the very onset, the mother involved the community nurse and in the help over the child, and she basically managed to do it all alone. And this was, of course, thanks to her IBCLC advisor, and thanks to her community nurse. This is the second case which I'd really like to read out. I'm a mother of 2. I agreed to talk to you because of your presentation and because of all of those who are like me and are thinking about parenthood. I experienced a traffic accident as a 4.5 months pregnant woman. I was operated on, but my doctors recommended that I abort. I refused, and they thought that I was in a condition of shock, but they also recommended the same thing to my husband, and he supported my decision. The medical staff was completely unprepared to care for a woman like me. I was a young future mother with severe injuries to my spine, and I wanted to give birth to my baby despite medical recommendations. No one worked with me in an adequate way. I was always met with disapproval and rejection, and I felt failed and left on my own. Or actually, I only had the support of my husband. Despite everything, I had my child was born prematurely under general anesthesia. He only weighed 1.2 kilos, but he was as determined and as resolute as I am. And we spent 45 days in the hospital. It was psychologically exhausting, and everyone who was there and was supposed to support me actually told me not to breastfeed. My second pregnancy took place 5.5 years later, was not planned. The doctor was completely different this time. She talked to me. She warned me to beware of falling because I used aids for walking. Crutches for walking, and she recommended. Actually, I didn't take the recommended medication, Lyresal, because I was afraid it would hurt my baby. I gave birth at week 37, and the doctor told me I could take my own decision on whether or not I wanted to breastfeed. I did. I breastfed for 10 months, and am proud of that. I quit after my immunity fell. But the fact is that my family situation changed. My husband quit his job so he could be at hand and so that he could help me after delivery. This is her message to all of you here. Listen to your heart and do try, at least try to breastfeed. If needed, fight for what you want to do. It's a memorable experience. And here she thanks the community nurses as well. What about our breastfeeding counselors? Well, people are mostly well aware of their abilities and rights. There's a lot of awareness raising nowadays, and we know about our rights. And healthcare professionals also know that women know about their disabilities or they know about their abilities. We need to listen to them and hear them out, see what they tell us, how we can help them. In any case, we need to support them in breastfeeding. When selecting aids, we need to be creative. We need to involve everyone in the family. Maybe it will be the first time that this person is taking care of their baby independently. Oh, by the way, I'd like to highlight that not just nurses, but everyone involved in caring for the mothers, either prior to or during birth or after birth, has to find a way to bridge their own expectations and their own beliefs and hear out the women with disabilities and what they have to say in order to make their experience a memorable one. Thank you for your attention. And now I'd like to invite my guest to tell us about her experience as a mother. So as I said, in addition to these study cases, we also have persons with spinal injuries. So I'd like to invite them to take the floor.
Evo, izvolite.
Ne treba, mogu i ovdje. Dobar dan, ja se zovem Boža.
Hello, my name is Bojna Dejanović, and I was really motivated by all the speeches today to tell you my story. I had a car accident when I was 18 years old, C7 injury, and then in 2001 I was pregnant and I gave birth to a healthy boy in Petrova. This is the largest maternity ward in Croatia. the doctors didn't really know what to do with me, but everything went well. My pregnancy was okay. When I came home, I breastfed for 2.5 months. I've managed to find my sitting positions, and I covered my legs with a pillow. That was the easiest way for me to breastfeed. And then I got a strong urinary infection, and I stopped breastfeeding because of the antibiotics. That's shortly my story, but if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them. My son is 16 years old now. I really want to thank you. It takes courage and will to come up front in front of everyone. It was difficult for me a few moments ago. I hoped I will not start to cry, but I can just support a mother who was successful in spite of all the obstacles and difficulties. I'm really pleased that I saw many people here with SCI who joined us here, and I'm really happy that I, as a community nurse in my future work, in any possible way, will contribute actually for people with SCI to feel a greater quality in their lives. Thank you.